Very good gamers, how are we? This is Games and Chill, and we are in a new video watching the new weapons of NATLAN Forge. The evolution of the weapons of the Forge in Genshin Impact. I think you all know a little bit about the root, especially the oldest ones. And is that from every version that brings us new weapons of the Forge, there are always several weapons that are rescued. As the Amber prototype that today is super used of the first Forges, besides Mondstadt and Liu. As the wooden sword for Bennett of the most recommended today in Sumeru. Like the mandible or the sword of a hand of Fontaine, which are swords that give you a barbarity of attack. Even as I always say, Fontaine's handler is a pencil, the little wolf for free to play, and along, etc. And already let me in the comments which weapon of the Forge is the one you have used the most, and the one that has helped you most in your adventure. And today we are going to see the new Forge weapons that will come in NATLAN, since possibly some of them. Spoiler albedo and some more around here. Spoiler Yunjin will improve quite a bit as well. They will be quite useful, and sure that in some of the circumstances they will be good for us. And we hope to find the concrete jewel that is. The weapon that is most used and is rescued from the weapons of Fontaine's Forge. A good ulti from Bennett. Thanks for supporting the channel and remembering that all this is free and helps the channel position and be recommended. Much more. To leave a good comment for the algorithm and go with the weapons of Fontaine's Forge. The good thing is that apart from the weapons of the Forge itself, I'm going to tell you about some extra weapons since I just put it aside. I said Fontaine. Pardon me, the weapons of NATLAN's Forge. For besides, there is some extra weapon that in the first version of NATLAN, they will give us. That is to say, remember that always when starting a version there is a permanent free weapon like, for example, that of catch, or as. For example, the swordfish. This is a bow that will be around here on screen that arrived in Sumeru, or the hit iron of happy couples in Fontaine. For in NATLAN there is a new weapon also that will arrive and give us free. So we started with the own free gun that you could get at any time. Moment and Bunya. It is a catalyst that gives us life and besides gives us life. I mean, think of catalysts that go with life, like Baiju, like Kokomi, like Barbara, like Novelette, like Moalani, even though they also require critical proportion and so on because they are carries. But if friends, they give us a very powerful catalyst when NATLAN starts. I think something broken and says like that. Base attack 510. This doesn't matter, is the average attack of the 5-star weapons. 41-30% of the maximum life of substate, and the passive says the. Tupac's Hug, it's called the passive Tupac for the comment algorithm. Size, when an attack hits the opponent, give 40% of the maximum life in feeble area. Gives a hit basically that does 40% damage to the area of effect once every 15 seconds, and this is wrong. I understand that this weapon is giving us a life similar to the Amber prototype. And weapons like that, because perhaps it can be used in enough characters to heal. Although thinking about it, 41-30% of life is similar, as I remember the Anbar prototype. So the passive gives us this hit, or this hit, is really a hit of 100,000 or 200,000 for carries like Mualani or like Novelette. Or I don't know what would be better than the Anbar prototype, but it might surprise us. Now, weapons of the Forge. Apart from the free weapon, we start with the controllable. The controllable gives us a base attack 565. Is a high base attack. Gives us a 27% attack substat, and then says when a character activates a pyro reaction. The elemental damage of that character increases by 16% to run, to R5 by 32% of elemental damage. Here, the explanation with the controllable is to compare it with that of Fontaine's current Forge, which is a very powerful controller that gives us a senseless amount of attack almost approaching the Tombstone inversion. 4 stars, and this nevertheless gives us very good attack, but gives us 32% elemental damage if you do a pyro reaction. Why do I comment on this? Because any character other than pyro but do a reaction with pyro. I mean a melt, a burn or something. Remember Kinish who goes with those mechanics? But possibly the attack would always remember that you can compensate with Bennett, and 32% of elemental damage would weigh more than the attack. In case of the attack be compensated with Bennett in line pyro, plus the weapon has used synergies with pyro. With the set of nobility, with the set of Yormada, and with 87 billion buffos as the hunter of dragons, and you know. So, This weapon is better than the current one in Fontaine's Forge? Yes, so we have a very good handler to start with. This is interesting because there was the free catalyst that gives life that I explained to you. There's the comparison with the Anbar prototype, and here's another catalyst that gives us life in NATLAN. I remember Bayuju, Kokomi, Barbara, Novilette, Morlani, and some other catalyst character using the life I'm forgetting. Well, the new catalyst of forging is 4130 of life, and the passive one says, win a passive with a very long name as they always do in Engine Impact, and when you use the elementary skill for every 1000 points say, maximum life increase normal attack damage by 0.5. The maximum that can be increased. This is 16% Aron, i.e. 32% R5 attack, damage, normal attack. If this catalyst included charged attacks, it would be better than the Anbar for Novelette because Novelette already heals from base alone, and by day. Today this catalyst that damages normal attacks is the free-to-play catalyst for Molani, just like the controllable is the controllable. Free-to-play for Kinish. They will surely be of your best weapons, especially this weapon for Molani free-to-play. It gives you life, and gives you 32% attack and normal attack damage because for Molani mainly. Sword to one hand Albedo comes in his prime, for he could not remove the Huso de Cinabrio, which is Albedo's event weapon. It gives him defense, ladies, gentlemen. We have a sword to a hand that gives us defense. The R5 gives us more than 100% defense, 101% defense basically. That is, you do take the base, and you take the base, and you basically duplicate it. This is very good for Albedo. So far, it's only for Albedo that I know of. I explained to you, Albedo's weapon of event, the Huso de Cinabrio, that brings you on screen that many people remember that it does not have, and it hurts him, and woe to my little heart. Well, basically it gives us the same defense as I think, if I remember correctly, and then passive what it does is it turns defense into damage to your elementary ability. Let's remember that Albedo's elementary ability scales with defense. That is, it increases a very powerful multiplier to your ability. Let's remember that in 3 Geo teams, Goru Bufa, the team's defense. It's not crazy, but it gives him more defense, so it's better than the Cinabrio Husus for Albedo. No, everyone who has the Cinabrio Huso to Albedo keep using it because that event weapon is Albedo's weapon. Is it better than any weapon for Albedo? Including the Sword of Dawn for Albedo by the insane amount of critical proportion that gives us at Albedo, does not weather the proportion and much, but I think he's going to be very close with the use of the Cinabrio, let us remember that Goru UCT gives you more critical damage, and maybe this can help you make up for it and so on. Furina, for example, that gives you damage in elementary ability and 88 critical damage. So, is it a good weapon for Albedo? Yes. Is it a direct buff? No, because even with Dawn Sword you have choices that is from 3 stars and you'll have it at R5 for sure. You have options very close to reaching an Albedo pick. It's just enough to make up for that need of people who didn't have the event weapon. Cinabrio Spindle, and maybe with a gun like that, maybe Bay ties the prototypes for the subject of resources, but in principle be careful because next weapon Yunjin's. Yes, friends. How many times have we talked that Yunjin would buff more to a normal attack? If I had a spear that would give him defense apart from the weapon of the battle pass that gives him defense? Well, we have a weapon in NATLAN's Forge that's a defense spear. I don't think anyone expected it, but because Yunjin is basically Yunjin, and it's the best in slot for Yunjin because you'd max the amount of normal attacks damage bonus that Yunjin is going to give, that more defense, more normal attack, if there would be no other character, in principle that I know not. And the problem of carrying this weapon in Yunjin, to keep in mind, it is the energy. Yunjin today is played with Favonius, and obviously is very good for Yunjin because the teams that they play with Yunjin have charging problems, and Yunjin has cost of 80, and has charging problems. This weapon is going to make Yunjin still need to pull out about 200 even though it already scales with recharged energy with which. It's gonna be a little easier, but if you don't wear a Favonius that gives you 30 refills, extra particles plus Yunjin scaling, that makes it very easy for you to play Yunjin in a normal and natural way. Now with the weapon of defense you will give more bonus with Yunjin, with which is a hypothetical Bufo, but you will not have that recharge of energy. So what does the spear do? Well, 510 base attack, the average base, the neutral of 4 stars, 51.7% defense, that is already crazy. And the passive increases the character's defense for 10 seconds because using the elemental as well as the sword. And around 16, R2 32 defense. So this weapon specifically gives us 83% extra defense to Yunjin. And R2 is a very big Bufo, but it will require the reconstruction of Yunjin, who plays it to look for 200 recharge at least. And Ace, the rest of the team will give him some per multi, but specifically this is a Bufo to Yunjin. And we're going with the last weapon we have, that's the Arch. We get a lot of attack, and passive gives us good elemental damage like NATLAN's handler compared to Fontaine's handler. And in this case, it's kind of weird because it says base attack 565, its attack state by 127%. The base attack is high 4. And it says because the character on NATLAN's team who has an elemental type of the equipped characters to say these. Passive as the set of golden dreams, remember. The equipped character wins 4.8 of additional attack, and when it is R5, since it is 9.6, that is almost 10% extra attack. So if you have 2 extra characters of this passive, because you can win up to 20% more attack. And it says when you have 3 or less of the characters mentioned above, that is to say, instead of the NATLAN characters when there are characters that aren't NATLANs. And they don't share element with the wearer wins for each character, 24. I mean, it's an arch that gives you a lot of attack and a little bit of mastery because you'll have some character on the team. It is to be played as with 2 characters of NATLAN and 2 who do not, or 3 of NATLAN and 1 who do not. And then the archer wins quite a bit of attack and a little bit of mastery, and I don't know that because the characters really do. Carries dentro. That, like Tignari for example, require much and use much better mastery in general and less attack. Then people have so much attack and a little mastery, I don't know right now who would fit in so much attack and a little bit. So long for now, maybe for future characters good because I don't know that. But between this weapon and the weapon of Fontaine's Forge, that is another arch that gives you a lot of attack and a good elemental damage to the passive. Well, maybe I'd say Fontaine's Forging Arch is slightly more useful, but we'll see. But basically they are very niche weapons of the character himself that do not serve anyone literally, and it can be seen that they are the weapons. Because it's the line they want to follow with the 5-star guns, because if they pull out 5-star global weapons for all characters, people will stop throwing 5-star guns in general. So these are the new weapons of the Forge. Let me in the comments which you find most useful, and for what character or what details we have forgotten in the video. And a little more thanks for watching the channel video. You already know how to exploit the like button, subscribe to everything for algorithm to help grow. Take care, to have very good day, and chaito.